Okay, welcome everybody. So today's is the Jane's seminar on her book Underlying Rock, and in fact, I have been working with Jane for over 10 years. So it's my honor to chit chat with her today. So, Jane, just I would like to. I'm interested to know how you have done your research in this book, Underlying Rock, because you have just put so much effort in it.
Is that because you found something that wasn't true about the 1970s in Hong Kong?
No, but it's very amazing for me to, you have got some in-depth research.
Well, I'm delighted to be here sitting with you, Betty. It's true. We've known each other for 10 years. Yep. We've published many books together. I think this is the 7th. Yep. But this one is for teenagers. It's a little bit older, isn't it? I mean, for an older audience. And it's my first bite at historical fiction.
Right.
So I did have to do research. I found it, dare I say it, relatively straightforward because of the incredible resource that the internet is these days. I could find photos, I could find videos, I could find interviews, I could find people who were teenagers in that time, all right? You know, I'm a bit of a relic myself now, right? So I remember what it was like at school in the 1970s, in a secondary school. Of course, it wasn't, well, it was not in Hong Kong. I arrived here in 1985, but I should say that my husband had a lot to do with it as well, because he arrived here in 1976, and he wasn't a teenager, but he has a very good memory, and he was in the music business, and had many anecdotes to share, and so he was also part of my research.
As a local Chinese, I found it very amazing to find so much detailed research data in your book as a historical fiction. It's very amazing to me, right?
Well, probably most people in the audience are looking at me and thinking, what is that Weibo doing writing about the 1970s? The main character is a 13-year-old local boy from a disadvantaged background. He has a difficult family to deal with. Why did I write it? I don't know. Well, I do. I taught for many years, as you know, in a local school. I have a great interest in Chinese culture and Hong Kong history. And I recognised that the 1970s was a period in Hong Kong when there was a lot of optimism. There were a lot of changes, societal, economic. We had our international port, but people from all over the world were coming to make money here. And then, of course, we had so many people from the mainland coming here to find a new life. So, yeah, another thing I could watch on the internet was the series Underlying Rock, right? The TV series, the song of which, Under the Lion Rock, made Roman Tam famous. So something about the Hong Kong spirit, you know, the resilience, the perseverance. It's always been of interest to me, and I'm very happy living here and plan to continue to live here.
Yes, as your book's editor, I'm the first reader of your book, and one of the reasons why I enjoy reading this book is that the characters are all lively and vivid. Could you share with us how to depict characters in a lively way?
I suppose as a teacher, ex-teacher, I remember how lively children were, especially at primary school, and how close they live to their feelings and their senses. You know, what they hear, what they see, what they touch, what they eat, all those kind of things. That is very. That's food for a writer to write a lively character, because we all live through our senses, I like to think that in the secondary schools here now that there are young people who still have the energy and the interest to study hard and to find what they're good at, what they're not so, and to follow their dreams. I do really hope that people continue that zest for learning in Hong Kong.
I like Joey's character. He is positive, and he's also willing to correct his own mistakes. So when you create this character, Joey, what do you have in mind?
I have people I know in Hong Kong. I mean, it's funny to writing fiction because we say we invent everything. And of course, in historical fiction, some of it's true. I mean, there are real characters in here, right? And there are real places, real settings. But also, there are imaginary characters. Joey is an imaginary character. But how I've formed him, if you like, is the mind works in mysterious ways, right? It's people I've met, it's things I've heard. When you ask that question, I can say the name because thousands of people are called John, but I remember an 11-year-old boy called John that I taught at St. Paul's Coeducational College in the early 2000s, and he just had such a lively mind and curiosity, you know, and interest, and he was very musical. He could play the piano very well. So he inspired me, and I remember him, and an element of his personality has come through in this book. Don't know why, but that's the story.
Good. Well, I see that in this book we have got many illustrations, and in the process, I see that you and Bianca, the illustrator, have put in great effort in drawing the illustrations. So could you also share with us the process how you and Bianca have tried to create historical scenes in the book?
Sure. I hadn't worked so closely with an illustrator before, and because it was historical fiction and she wasn't Chinese, although she did a master's here, that's how I met her. She was based in the Philippines, but amazingly, again, through the internet, I discovered that, first she read the story, and that's vital, right? And then she likes to like the story, because making illustrations is a lot of work and effort and love. And then we had Zoom calls, and she had already found a lot on the internet. You know, for example, something that springs to mind, that when we talked about the scene where the stepfather is ill, and I talked about whether there should be an aircon there or not, and she could do some research and say, oh, well, yes, it's possible he did have an aircon, but it's got to be fixed to the window, that kind of thing. So she could find out details about the illustrations through looking and researching online. But how we came up with which moment, really, that she chose to illustrate, we decided for technical reasons that it should be at the top of every chapter. You know the reason why.
I know.
Technically simpler.
Technically.
Yeah, okay, we won't go into that. But then it was like, okay, what moment in this chapter is Bianca going to capture? And I didn't want to tell her what to do, but interestingly, we often came up with the same, because we had a brainstorm on the Zoom. Okay, chapter 10. And then I suppose we looked for dramatic moments, like when Joey is running away from home and he's climbing down the scaffolding, and then the neighbour below sees him and thinks, there's a thief, something vivid and dramatic. Or something funny, like maybe Joey's... What's funny? What can you remember that was funny? I tried to put some funny things in this story to make people laugh. Oh, yeah. Well, I've thought of the opposite. Something sad, right? There's a little boy called Ray who misses his mother so much. He cuddles his violin in his bed to get to sleep. That was a sad moment. But then the happy moment, they're busking. They're on the street trying to get some money to keep this specialist music school that I've made up alive, because it was built by immigrants, long gone. It's been mainly funded by a rich Chinese businessman who's passed away and hadn't put in his will that the money, could be continued for this school. So they have to do a fundraiser. So Joey goes out on the street and with some of his friends and starts playing to get people's interest and get some money. So that was the time, So I suppose it's illustrations that will be interesting. Yeah. I hope you get through to the end of the book if you decide to buy it, right? As a writer, you just want people to read your book. So ideally, the illustrations might make you think, oh, what's happening here? And encourage you to find out why.
Well, then which historical scene in the book is your favorite one?
Historical? The illustration?
Illustration.
Well, I suppose it's the image of when Joey first sees a Western orchestra. So it is historical, but actually it's contemporary, and let's hope that Western classical music continues in the future. But I suppose that's because I remember as a 10-year-old when I was taken to see Mozart's Magic Flute, and I was just entranced. I was just couldn't believe the beauty of it, and the sound. And so for me, when I look at that illustration, it reminds me of that joy of hearing for the first time and seeing an orchestra playing. Yeah, this is very much about music, this book. I went to a specialist music school. A third of my timetable from the age of 12 was practicing piano, viola, singing, theory, choir, musicals. It was a very musical school. It still exists. But in my story, I've imagined that there's a school like that in Hong Kong. Could be, why not? Right? There are a lot of very musical, naturally very gifted people here. But it's the kind of school that you need funds. It needs support, government support or rich people's support. So, yeah, music is very much part of this book.
Good. This book is about pursuing dreams. But as I have known you for over 10 years, so I witnessed that you are pursuing the dream of becoming a writer. So could you share with us what motivates you to write and what keeps your passion in writing?
I suppose it was a childhood dream to write, but I had to work for many decades. But it got to a time where I thought, okay, I'm happy to have a simpler life. and devote myself to see if I really can write. So I think my passion has come from young people, from teaching. I taught full-time for 6 years at a local school. It was fascinating. It was really meaningful to see these young people growing up, and their inquiring minds and their extraordinary abilities and personalities. But it got to the stage where it was like mentally fascinating, but physically exhausting. When I started, there were classes of 40. Oh my God. And then, with the DSS system, then it went to 28. But even with 28 lively young people, it was really tiring. So after 6 or 7 years, I set up a tutorial college for a couple of years, but then that didn't really hit the spot. I don't know, it was just one-on-one. I think I like to be with young people. I like to talk to young people, listen to them. Too bad there aren't some here today, but never mind, maybe they'll read my book. Then I thought, okay, if I write a good book means a good story. Right? That's something that touches the heart of someone, that you feel some kind of emotional response. Maybe this is not the book, I don't know. But that's my kind of motivation, really, because for me, it's like to read a good story or to meet an inspiring person. It gives my life some meaning, some interest. So maybe my aim is a bit lofty, a bit high, but ideally, wow, if a lot of people could read this book and then think, yeah, I want to be a singer too, or I want to be an artist, or I want to be a film director, or some of these artistic things in Hong Kong, that makes any effort that, well, you have made a lot of effort too, right, to get this book. It makes it all worthwhile. And so the idea of, as a teacher, you meet maybe 80 children a day teaching. But as a book, who knows, maybe thousands of people will read this book. So it's a bit long-winded answer to your question.
Well, when we understand from your background that you love Chinese culture, and I would like to know what particular aspects in Chinese culture that attract you the most. Music?
Music, did you say?
I'm making guesses.
Well, there was nothing like playing in canto pop shows in the 1990s here. It was a bit wild. But all those characters, I should explain that I came here as a viola player in the Hong Kong Philharmonic, and after a couple of years, I did not play full-time for the Philharmonic anymore, so I was a freelance viola player, and I was much in demand, all right, because most of the players of Western classical instruments played in the Hong Kong Philharmonic, and they were always busy on Friday and Saturday night, but I wasn't. So I was, and music, it's a universal language. I didn't have to say anything, right? I just had to play the notes. So I was invited to all kinds of musical events. We had people like Pavarotti coming, and then, wow, who else? So many. But at the same time, we did the radio jingles, we did the TV shows, the live shows, and the canto pop shows. And in the mid-80s, right, then it was getting very popular, so they would all be in the Colosseum, so there'd be, audience, 3,000 people. And then the musicians, not the musicians, James Koo and James Wong, Joseph Koo, you know, they were there, and they, you know, I met Sam Hoy. He's also like a grandfather of canto pop. They were there, you know, and it was very creative. They were writing new songs, and it was more and more a combination of Western harmonies with Chinese instruments, and, you know, beautiful lyrics in Cantonese. I mean, it was. I loved the sound of canto pop, and it was really popular. About Chinese culture, that is one element of Chinese culture that that I loved. And I suppose because I was working in that milieu, you know, with those people, then I met more and more local friends, you know, rather than expat. And Chinese culture, where do I start? I mean, you know, I studied Chinese, Putonghua, for 2 years at Hong Kong U. I have an interest in Chinese history, 5,000 years. I enjoyed, past tense really, I enjoyed traveling around mainland China. I've been to all the provinces except for 2. I worked in Beijing twice. It's a fascination, and now I've been here for so long, I feel more comfortable living here than in my home country, I suppose, England. Yeah.
Have you got any more to share with us?
About what?
About your passion for writing?
Passion for writing? Thought you were going to say something else. Okay. Passion for writing.
Or the next book.
Oh, the next book.
Have you got any new ideas?
I haven't, actually. The history of this book is it's been 10 years in the making. I'd finished 2/3 of it. Well, I finished about half of it as part of my master's program in creative writing. And then I stopped and wrote other things. Then I continued it, and then I received some very tragic news about my daughter in 2017, and that actually just stopped the flow, let's say. But about a year ago, I thought, well, come on, Jane, it's sitting in your drawer. You know, you're 2/3 of the way through. You like the story. My mother died, that was another thing. But both my parents were professional musicians, and I had a very musical, liberal upbringing, let's say. So I thought, how about I think, you know, this is for my parents, and I'm going to finish it. So I put my head down for about 4 months and finished it, and then sent it to you. And much to my surprise...
My pleasure.
Oh, wow, much to my surprise, Betty said, oh, okay, I like this story. And then, wow, commercial press are going to publish it. Of course, I was delighted. So then I looked at it again and thought, this is really bad, I must improve it. So then I spent about another 6 months rewriting it, and this is the final product. Yes. So about the future, I don't know. I'm not sure where my mind will go if I let it roam freely, let's say. I'm very aware that I have a lot of picture books that I would love to have illustrated and therefore produce. Therefore, children can read it. They're all about Hong Kong settings, animals, objects. So I might do that. But about the future, I'm not sure. I've finished my memoir, and that has been published in Arabic, actually. But I'm not having it published in English because it's too it's too triggering for my family and loved ones who, you know, lost a relative. Yeah.
Okay, so let's round up our seminar with the question and answer section. So how about maybe Oliver? We are glad to see you here.
I see another musician
so we
too.
invite you to raise questions.
Well, actually, I just received the book 2 hours ago, and I've invented a word. It's unputdownable.
Oliver, no need to flatter me.
Because I was a teenager in the 70s, so I was like reading myself in it. I'm not Joey, but you know, it's very, very interesting. And there are a lot of local anecdotes that I don't know how you got to know about them. like fish balls.
Oh, yes.
You described it so well, and I felt sorry for myself when I was reading it before lunch.
Made you hungry.
The way you describe it, oh my God, you know, it brings me back to really to those good old days. And in fact, because my family was originally from Macau, so we always returned to Hong Kong, and that's where the open market was. And you describe it so well.
You mean in Macau? Oh, yeah, Macau. I remember it in 85 it was there, then 86, 87 it was demolished. But oh, really? Okay.
So, yeah, I haven't finished reading it yet. I'm not a quick reader. I'm halfway through. And congratulations. And I will look forward to reading the rest of it.
Oh, dear Oliver, well, that's makes it sound wonderful. But thank you very much. Of course, I really respect your opinion as, you know, probably the music critic of Hong Kong. And yes, you were a teenager in the 70s. So, and if you were here, I would be fascinated to get some very honest feedback. You know, what have I missed? Because, you know, yeah.
One piece of very honest feedback.
Yeah, please.
That is about Yo-Yo Ma.
Oh, yes.
You know, Joey was fascinated by his, you know, world #1, you know, Charles and all. He wasn't so in the 70s. He was born in 55, so that makes him 23, 24. First time in 1977.
Yeah,
And
very
so,
good point.
You know,
Yeah. So he was only 15 at the time. Yeah. Very good point. Okay. Well, he'd played in front of the American president by then, but that was about it. Yes. Yeah.
well, he was born 55, so your story is
79 actually. It's 1979, so 50.
Well, he was quite famous then. In
Yeah.
1979, he made a recording with Herbert von Karajan playing the Beethoven triple.
Right.
He wasn't the really top.
Yes.
Roscoe, Starker, they were the top artists.
Point absolutely taken. You know, I've written a biography about Yo-Yo Ma, so that's in my mind. I had the book that I had written about Yo-Yo Ma, but of course I wrote it in 2015 or something. So yeah, very good point. What's called an anachronism, right? I've actually, yeah, I needed to remember that 1979, that Yo-Yo Ma was only 24, and he was brilliant. He was a genius, but maybe no one would have written a book about him at that time. Thank you very much. There you are. Any more?
Any more questions?
Jane, I can't wait to get my hands on your book. And I'm sorry I missed so much of your talk. I was sent on a wild goose chase almost around the entirety of the convention centre
To get here, yeah.
But knowing you as I do, and for as long as I have, and knowing how many very different things you've done in your life, what's next? What is the one thing you haven't yet done that you want to do? What's coming up next?
Give up. don't know. It's a very personal question, right? Let's have dinner sometime.
Let's give her some time to think it over, okay? This one, okay.
Congratulations. I know as a writer, it's not easy to write a book, and I can imagine 10 years long is a big commitment. And I really appreciate your determination, focus, and persevering. A few questions I would like to ask.
Please.
As a writer yourself, first question is, who are the other writers that impact you, influence you, inform you, to make you to be a effective writer, to communicate with your audience? Number one. Number two is, I love the color a lot, the beautiful, the book on the cover.
Thanks to Betty and her team.
It's amazing. I mean, I think the designer really got a lot of good design thinking on
Yeah,
it. You know,
very
really
nice.
draw the attention of the reader. I love it. Second question is, why not, like, under the peak of Hong Kong, right? Why Line Rock? Question three is,
All right. Can I answer the first two questions first? Sorry, I have got a pea brain these days. So the first question about writers, well, I suppose I identified that I wanted to write for children rather than adults when I chose to be a writer. And so I have read widely, I like to think, but in terms of writing for children, I remembered more what I'd read as a child and what really, I loved. And have you heard of Enid Blyton? It's a really old, dated English author. But the high adventure I really enjoyed as a child. And things that made me laugh, things that took me to places that I didn't know, like Arthur Ransom. It's very traditional, I suppose, the writing. But I can tell you now as an adult, which adult writers I like, and especially poetry. Poetry I get a lot out of these days, just reading poetry. But yeah, for children's writers, well, now there are so many fantastic children's writers. Yeah, J.K. Rowling, right? I mean, her books are classics. There's so much choice these days. So I think it's a personal choice which writer as a child you respond to. But I think the important thing is that ideally you're reading about someone like yourself in your place where you live. Then you can identify. And then, yeah, so that's the answer to the first question. And the second question, well, I don't think it was really a question, but just say, thanks, Betty, for this cover. Yeah, I'm very happy with it. Yeah, I was thinking it would be black and white, and then Betty said, well, let's have it colour. So here it is in colour. So your third question, please.
I'll do that. I have 2 more questions.
Oh.
Have you thought about to translate this English book into other languages? I mean, I'm looking at, for example, China, like 1.3 billion people, India, 1.35 billion people. I mean, so for me, that definitely is a great idea to even, like, I read some book, even bilingual, like English, Chinese on the right-hand side. And I think that definitely able to enrich the learning experience of all the teenagers, if that's your target audience. Yeah.
So maybe Betty would like to answer that question as my publisher.
Well, I think your idea is very good, and I will discuss with Jane afterwards.
Sure. And my last one will be about, really impressed about your travel experience in China. You shared earlier that you traveled all the provinces except 2. My question in here would be, how that traveling experience, really first-hand experience into those states, provinces, city, villages, change your worldview about China?
My worldview. Each province is so different, right? And you're talking about in the equivalent of a population of a country, for example, in Europe or many other countries. I found China interesting because being able to understand Putonghua, you know, and that Putonghua being taught in schools around, you know, we could be in, where could we be? Xi'an, you know, we could be in Jiangsu, we could be in Chengdu, we could, Suzhou, and you could just speak Putonghua, you know. So that was really helped me to understand more about the culture. So I suppose in terms of worldview, it's like how interesting it is for countries, especially countries like China, who've been, you know, that's had a culture for so many thousands of years. The history, you know, what's happened and why, and how so much of history is cyclical. Just the vastness of the world and how interesting the world is, actually. You know, I haven't been to South America yet, but that's another place that I would love to see and get to know more, but I need to study some Spanish first. Maybe that answers your question.
Okay, thank you all for coming, and we have books displayed at the back if you are interested in it, so you can...
Oh, there's one more question,
one
Betty.
last question? Okay.
Any questions gratefully received? Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for your sharing your story. I think I'm too old to be another believer and too young to be teenager. I think this is wonderful. So I read any flight that I was doing a spy. But my question is, how much does your mystical voice influence your writing? How much?
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah. It's interesting. As writers, many writers I know have discovered that if you write something, it looks so-so on the page or it looks fine, and you read it aloud, and then you find yourself wanting to change a word here, word there, the length of the sentence there, and that's something to do with, language being a mode of communication, it's sound, like music is. So there is some theory that if you have if you're gifted in music in any way, then you tend to write in a way that's poetic and powerful, let's say. I think it is part of the nature of writing that it needs to sound well. You know, it's not just words on the page.
Okay, could I invite you to read?
Which part should I read, Betty?
The lyrics, the English lyrics of Underline Rock.
The English lyrics. Hey, you should be singing them in Cantonese. That would be...
You sing in English.
No.
Just choose one of your favorite passage.
Really?
Yes.
I should have prepared this, right? I was going to read just the beginning, but... I'll just read the beginning. Okay. So this is the beginning. That evening after school, Joey picked pockets with Todd and Shrimp. They met under the ding-ding of multicoloured lights strung high along the embankment of Macau Ferry's night market. With a fresh breeze blowing from the South China Sea, it was cool for October. Business at the makeshift stalls was brisk, with buyers sifting trinket-laden trays, sellers spewing prices, and coolies in conical hats, carrying baskets on shoulder poles, crying, "Jet, jet." Joey had already picked a few pockets. He knew it was wrong to steal, but what else could he do if his stepfather gave him so little pocket money? Besides, it was an opportunity to meet up with his old school friends. Fingering the coins in his blazer pockets, he calculated how many fish balls he could buy. 10 cents a skewer, 5 balls a stick. That meant at least 20. There at the candy stall on the edge of the market was another target. A white boy with orange hair, about the same height as Joey, but double the girth. Balancing an interesting-looking object between his knees, he was biting into an explosion of pink candy floss. Joey hummed a snatch of his victory song in anticipation of an easy win. But Todd and Shrimp had noticed him too. Todd strode ahead, Shrimp trailing him. Joey quickened his pace. "Watch where you're going," shouted a swerving cyclist. "Squawk, squawk," squawked the chicken strung upside down from the handlebars. The schoolboy, alerted, shoved the case under his arm and made a break for it. But Todd caught up with him, pinning him to the back of a stall. "Okay, okay," said the boy. His voice had broken. "What do you want?" Beads of sweat shone on his forehead. Joey held him by the collar while Todd rummaged through his blazer. "My driver's coming," said the boy, and Joey understood. This rich Guizai had a chauffeur. "Give me the gun," said Shrimp in Cantonese, tugging at the case. The boy shrugged his shoulders, unable to understand. "I saw him first," Todd said, elbowing Shrimp out of the way. "It's mine." "Bang, bang, you wouldn't even know how to shoot one," said Shrimp. "That's no gun," said the boy. The case was black, fiberglass, tapered at one end. Why would the boy be carrying a gun? Joey guessed it was a musical instrument. Click, click, Todd flicked the 2 catches, opened the case, and sniffed. "Kapow!" shouted Shrimp, diving to the ground. Underneath a yellow cloth was a golden instrument with a flared end. A label inside the case read, "Sassoon School of Music." "Duh," said the boy. "I told you it wasn't." Okay, that's probably enough.
Let's give a big hand to Jane. And that's the end of our seminar. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for coming. Bye-bye.
I just want to say thank you so much, Jane, for coming and for such an interesting seminar. May I now invite a representative for HKTDC to come on the stage to present souvenirs.